Good morning, everyone, on this Emancipation Day. My name is Lisa Boulay, and I'm delighted to be your worship associate this morning. As we note on our beginning slides and on our website, we acknowledge that our campus is located on traditional, unsurrendered, and unceded Algonquin Anishinaabeg territory, and that the work of reconciliation is a responsibility of our congregation and all Canadians. Today, we also want to welcome the First Unitarian Church of Hamilton. Welcome to our service. With the current COVID restrictions, we are bringing you this service from a live stream and some recorded. So we thank you for welcoming us into your home. Do take care and take advantage of online opportunities at FirstU to stay in touch during this time. If you are new to FirstU or would like to learn more about us, please contact us through our email at welcome@firstunitarianottawa.ca. Following our service at 11:30, do join us as well for our virtual hospitality hour. You will find the Zoom link on our website at www.firstunitarianottawa.ca or in our weekly email newsletter, the EUU. As we won't be seeing each other in person, it is more important than ever to sign up to receive the EUU, our weekly email newsletter, check Facebook page, and our web pages for notices and updates. Our online calendar is as full as ever. We have a couple of announcements today from our Environmental Action Group. So we have a new Enviro Action for August. In the EUU or on the Climate Confrontation page, you will find a link to a list of some of the many environmental organizations active in Canada. During August, we suggest that you select several of these that you'd like to learn more about. Follow their links and read the About or About Us section. Then choose one or more you would like to support, and depending on what they offer, you can sign up for their newsletter, donate to the group on a one-time basis or a monthly basis, volunteer to work with this group, or watch one or more of their webinars. And we also have a new Enviro advocacy for August. We are asking you to support Stand.Earth's petition calling on decision makers to stop logging whole trees for wood pellets. Wood pellets are meant to be produced from waste wood, but demand is so high, whole trees, including old growth forests, are being used to produce wood pellets, which are then exported as a green biomass fuel to replace coal in the production of electricity. Problem is, wood pellets are not really carbon neutral in the short term and are more polluting than coal. And Canadian forests are being lost at such a rate that they are losing their ability to act as a carbon sink, becoming carbon emitters. To read more, please check out the EUU. Whatever your heritage, whatever your faith, whomever you love, and however you identify, today you are part of our spiritual community. Our opening words for this week's service come from the Daily Compass. You share 55% of the DNA of your genes with a banana tree, 80% with a cow, 98.5% with a chimpanzee, and 99.99% with every other human being on the planet. 1/10,000th of the DNA in our genes is responsible for all the differences we see in humanity, for the hundreds of rainbow shades that skin, eyes, and hair come in, for the differences that make it so hard to find organs to transplant, for every shape and size that humans come in. Notice your connection to other living beings today. Feel your relation to them. They are all kin.
Chalice, chalice, burning bright, help remind us with your light of how we'd like to live each day with love and truth helping lead the way.
This is the time in the service where we recognize people's personal joys and concerns. We do this by placing stones in water and allowing the ripples to take these thoughts out into the universe where they may be commiserated with or congratulated. A stone today for Carol, who is celebrating her 80th birthday tomorrow. A stone requested by Tony for his wife, Sharon, who is dealing with brain cancer. Tony and Sharon have been longtime members of this congregation and are now living out west. A stone of congratulations for Michelle on the birth of her second grandchild, a boy named Zachary. As has already been mentioned, today is Emancipation Day. And if you are not sure what that is, I encourage you to look it up. It's a very interesting part of our history. Once again, a stone of concern for all the forest fires that are still burning out west. And a stone of congratulations for everybody who has been vaccinated. And a stone of concern that COVID is still with us and apparently is trying to make a resurgence. And one last stone for all the joys and concerns held in our hearts. We will now have a moment of silence.
Good morning. My name is Colleen, and it's my pleasure to introduce a short video called The Bear Who Wasn't for Story for All Ages. The film is a fable and points to how we need to each find our own bearings to understand and respect our own identities based on what we believe to be true, not on how others might see us or want us to be. So watch in this story for any ouch or hurtful treatment, which we refer to as gaslighting. Gaslighting is where a person or a group makes someone question their identity, perception of reality, or memories. People experiencing gaslighting often feel confused, anxious, and unable to trust themselves. In this story, Bear awakens from his winter sleep and is forced to navigate the factory and society's perception of who they think he should be.
Once upon a time, in fact it was on a Tuesday, the bear saw that it was time to go into a cave and hibernate, and that was just what he did. Not long afterward, in fact it was on a Wednesday, lots of workers arrived near that cave. While the bear slept, they built a great, huge factory. As winter turned to spring, the bear awoke and stepped out of his cave. His eyes popped. Where was the forest? Where was the grass? Where were the trees? Where were the flowers? What had happened? "I must be dreaming," he said. "Of course I'm dreaming." But it wasn't a dream. It was real. Just then, the foreman came out of the factory. "Hey, you! Get back to work," he said. The bear replied, "I don't work here. I'm a bear." The foreman laughed. "That's a fine excuse for a man to keep from doing any work, saying he's a bear." The bear said, "But I am a bear." The foreman stopped laughing. He was very mad. "Don't try to fool me," he said. "You're not a bear. You're a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat. I'm going to take you to the general manager." The general manager also insisted the bear was a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat. The bear said, "No, you're mistaken. I am a bear." The general manager was very mad too. The bear said, "I'm sorry to hear you say that. You see, I am a bear." The third vice president was even madder. The second vice president was more than mad or madder. He was furious. The first vice president yelled in rage. He said, "You're not a bear. You're a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat. I'm going to take you to the president." The bear pleaded, "This is a dreadful error, you know, because ever since I can remember, I've always been a bear." And that's exactly what the bear told the president. "Thank you for telling me," the president said. "You can't be a bear. Bears are only in a zoo or a circus. They're never inside a factory, and that's where you are, inside a factory. So how can you be a bear?" The bear said, "But I am a bear." The president said, "Not only are you a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat, but you are also very stubborn. So I'm going to prove it to you once and for all that you are not a bear." The bear said, "But I am a bear." The president packed his vice presidents and the bear into a car and they drove to the zoo. Bears at the zoo said the bear was not a bear because if he were a bear, he would be inside a cage. The bear said, "But I am a bear." So they all left the zoo and they drove to the nearest circus. "Is he a bear?" the president asked the circus bears. The bear said no. If he were a bear, he would be wearing a little hat with a striped ribbon, holding onto a balloon and riding a bicycle. The bear said, "But I am a bear." When the president and his vice presidents returned to the factory, they put the bear to work on a big machine with lots of other men. The bear worked on the big machine for many, many months. After a long, long time, the factory closed and all the workers went away. The bear was the last one left. And as he left the shut-down factory, he saw geese flying south and leaves falling from the trees. Winter was coming, he thought. It was time to hibernate. He found a cave and was about to enter when he stopped. "I can't go in a cave. I'm not a bear. I'm a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat." As the days grew colder and the snow fell, the bear sat shivering with cold. "Ah, I wish I were a bear," he thought. Then suddenly he got up, walked through the deep snow toward the cave. Inside it was cozy and snug. The icy wind and the cold, cold snow couldn't reach him there. He felt warm all over. He sank down on a bed of pine boughs, and soon he was happily asleep and dreaming sweet dreams, just like all bears do when they hibernate. So even though the foreman and the general manager and the third vice president and the second vice president and the first vice president and the president and the zoo bears and the circus bears had said he was a silly man who needed a shave and wore a fur coat, I don't think he really believed it. Do you? No, indeed, he knew he wasn't a silly man, and he wasn't a silly bear either. This excerpt comes from Facing History and Ourselves, Holocaust and Human Behavior. For more information on this resource and our organization, please visit our website, facinghistory.org, or find us on Facebook.
I hope you empathized and felt the ouch that happened to Bear as he was repeatedly gaslit by the factory owner. And remember, if anyone tries to convince you about who you are or who you are not, as in, you're just a silly person who needs a shave and wearing a fur coat, remember to tell them, no, you're wrong. I'm a bear.
Our reading this morning is from the poet Nixon Waterman. If I knew you. If I knew you and you knew me, if both of us could clearly see, and with an inner sight divine, the meaning of your heart and mine, I'm sure that we would differ less and clasp our hands in friendliness. Our thoughts would pleasantly agree if I knew you and you knew me.
Hello, I'm Chuck Shields, and I am one of a group of UU First Ottawa UU members and adherents organizing today's service. We participated in a course titled More Kyriarchy, designed and conducted by Ian Hill, who was our intern minister over the past year. The others who've been part of organizing this service are Jan Andrews, Eva Berenger, Colleen Glass, Jane Lindsay, Xenia, and Carl Sonnen. It's particularly a pleasure to come to you this morning here from inside our sanctuary on this cool but rainy day, but still very pleasant midsummer day, and also happening to be, as Lisa mentioned earlier, the day, Emancipation Day. And also it's great to have our friends from the First Unitarian Church of Hamilton joining us. We, the organizing group, thought that what we had experienced in the course might be of interest to others in the congregation, and so have prepared this service. As I said, we're pleased to have the folks from the First Unitarian Church of Hamilton with us, and because we are both First U's, I will be using that phrase today to refer to both our congregations unless I specify the Ottawa one. There were 25 participants in the course, and we were drawn from both our congregation here and the UU Fellowship of Ottawa. We met via Zoom for an hour and a half every other Monday at 5 p.m. from mid-January to the end of May. Ian provided readings, videos, music selections for us to consider before each class. Then, during the Zoom sessions, Ian would provide comments and we would discuss the topics of focus for that day, often sharing our own experiences and learnings in small groups and with the whole group. Ian explained in the first session that the course aimed at addressing many intersecting isms: racism, sexism, tokenism, ethnocentrism, classism, ableism, ageism, and anthropocentrism, or human-centeredness. As we journeyed in the course, we explored and began to appreciate more how these isms connect and stem from a common base of privilege and socialization. For many of us in the Ottawa congregation, and I would think also in the Hamilton one, this is expressed as white privilege, growing from our social system that has advantaged those of us who are white. However, even those among us at these FirstUs who are not white likely, although not necessarily, enjoy privileges as a result of class, education, income, gender, or other advantages. Through the course, we came to appreciate that we all need to work continually to increase our awareness and strive to avoid making comments or acting in ways based on our privilege and socialization. This is something we need to do for ourselves and need to be prepared to mention, when we see another person saying or doing something that is hurtful. That is, we need to show up to draw attention to the issue and not to let it pass by. If we do let these issues pass by, they are reinforced and they begin or continue to feel normal and accepted. The title of this sermon, Learning to Go from Ouch and Oops to Aha and Nice, points to a pathway we can follow in this work. Ouch occurs when we draw to someone's attention something that they have said or done that likely had a hurtful impact. Oops is when we have caught ourselves saying or doing something that we recognize was probably hurtful. Aha captures the recognition by ourselves and the other person of what has been done or said, and nice is the result of this recognition and beginning to act in a positive way. Drawn from their experiences in Ian's course, 4 participants will speak via recorded messages about 4 key concepts that focus on this pathway. Colleen Glass has already spoken about gaslighting in our story for all ages. Jane Lindsay will speak about tokenism. Carl Sonnen will address labeling using the example of mental health, and Eva Berenger will discuss microaggressions. We will now hear from Jane, Carl, and Eva.
As Chuck said, one topic we discussed in our course was tokenism. Tokenism happens when well-meaning people try to do the right thing, but use superficial gestures instead of demonstrating substantive equity and inclusion. One form of tokenism that was easy for us to understand is when we engage people on anti-oppression work, but then don't follow through. Our newspapers are filled with examples of this, and unfortunately, so at times are our UU congregations. It was harder for us to recognize the line between tokenism and real inclusion when we're actively engaging with another person who's from a different group than our dominant one. Focusing on this difference can lead to that person feeling like we are only connecting with them as a representative of that identity group, rather than engaging with them for all of who they are. One story we shared was about a couple who came to a UU congregation and was immediately asked, how can we bring in more couples of color like you? They were asked also a lot of questions about being racialized and very quickly urged to join committees to bring their perspectives on these. The couple felt overwhelmed and had a real ouch that people seemed to be engaging with them superficially because they were only focusing on one aspect of their identity. We also heard that younger members of our UU congregations have sometimes felt they've been approached in tokenistic ways. For example, by being asked what brought them as a young person to the congregation. One of our participants told us they were asked to join several committees specifically because they could bring a young voice and perspective. That was a big ouch for them. This led to some older congregants in our group saying, oops, that they realized that they had unintentionally been tokenizing this way. When our group discussed the ouch and oops of this, a younger participant told us that the problem was not that we've been asking questions or that we wanted to engage with and involve people, but that if the newcomer, the young person, in her case her, didn't experience that they were being engaged with for all of who they are, then it felt really tokenistic. They said that this experience for them had left them feeling there was little room for them to connect with us on other topics or things we had in common. Hearing this impact was a real aha for some of us, including me. A further form of tokenism we discussed had to do with making stereotyping assumptions about groups of people. A course participant gave an example of having heard a request for volunteers to join the communications committee. The issue was that the request asked specifically for young volunteers because they are familiar with new technology and social media. On hearing this story, an older person in our group said, ouch, that they found this really ageist. And in response, a younger congregant in our group said that they in fact knew some older people who were far more skilled at social media and new communications tools than younger people. In effect, both stereotyping and tokenism limit what we see people being able to contribute, and effectively and unnecessarily limits our talent pools. This doesn't serve anybody well. By the conclusion of our discussion on tokenism, we had the overall aha that the nice or kind thing for us to do, as we focus on others, is to do so on them as a whole person, rather than on any one aspect of or aspects of their identity or making assumptions about these. One way we can do this is to ask broad questions early on, such as, what are your passions? And where would you like to contribute? We also concluded that if we do want to engage on topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion with others who are different than the dominant group, that we need to be prepared to do so in meaningful, sustained, deeper ways, not superficial, tokenistic ones. Last but not least, we agreed that if our behavior gets an ouch, or if we catch ourselves being tokenistic, that we treat our mistake not as a disaster, but as an aha and a lesson on how we can do better.
Good morning. My name is Carl Sonnen and I sit on the FirstU Board of Directors. Welcome to outside visitors from other congregations today. I'd like to talk about labels and labeling and how to become better allies. I was assigned the topic of mental illness and diagnostic labels and categorization as it pertains to people with mental health challenges and how these labels can be stigmatizing or limiting in our ability to see the whole person. I would like to expand the topic to labels and categorization more generally, and how these labels and definitions can often limit how we see and appreciate others. My favorite self-defining categories or labels I like to apply to myself because they make me feel comfortable are child of God, human being, and animal. Some people may wonder at the term animal, which is often used pejoratively, such as describing someone who eats like a pig or looks like a dog, but since I see no problem with how pigs eat and think all dogs are cute, I wouldn't be bothered at all if you made any of those comments to me, and I'm happy with my biological and scientific classification as an animal. Not everyone uses or likes to be defined by the same labels, pronouns, categorizations, and definitions, and it is very important and a sign of respect to speak and refer to others using their own preferred terms. Such an approach demonstrates a desire to get to know and appreciate a person more deeply when we take the time to learn and use the language a person prefers to be identified and associated with. It's simply a matter of mental laziness or unwillingness to get to know someone else personally that causes us to insist on using descriptions and language that can be seen as being stereotypical, classist, sexist, racist, or other generalizations that make someone else feel uncomfortable, unseen, or misrepresented. In the past, I myself have used language and participated in exchanges of humor that were ethnocentric, racist, sexist, and homophobic, because I was taught and enculturated by my own society and cultural associations that this type of language had some grounding in reality and was therefore acceptable in some context. It was only when I realized that adopting and perceiving the world in this way was a choice and rooted in nothing but negative subjective assumptions that I understood why this type of language and humor is not acceptable or funny at all. In order to become better allies, and real allyship transcends race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, age, and nationality, we need to be mindful of the language you use to define others, both in their presence and when discussing them when they are not around. I never try to describe anyone else, no matter who they are, in derogatory terms, like stupid, ugly, or worthless, as I myself would not like to be described and categorized in that way. I am happy, however, to point out to anyone, regardless of age, gender, category, or professional title, when I believe their language or behavior is unacceptable, just as I need to be willing to accept criticism when I fall short in my own use of language or when I make others feel uncomfortable. Instead, if I'm frustrated by someone's behavior or use of language, I like to ask them why they described an individual in such a derogatory way, or why they thought their particular use of language or humor is acceptable to them. Rather than writing them off as xenophobic, racist, sexist, etc., I think it's preferable to have an open discussion regarding their own subjective and culturally biased perspective, which we all have, by the way, regardless of who we are or where we come from, so that we can all see each other in a more authentic and positive light going forward, and so we can drop and or unlearn those negative cultural, religious, racial, sexist stereotypes we've all been subjected to throughout our lifetimes. This kind of approach can create more allies instead of alienating others, who we may subjectively categorize as enemies, and is more likely to lead to greater clarity and understanding with others, which makes everyone mentally, culturally, and socially wealthier and happier as a result. This kind of growth and learning generally happens one person and one conversation at a time. Thank you for listening.
Microaggressions. It's a term that we've been hearing a lot lately. It's actually not a new term. It was coined back in the 1970s by Harvard University professor Chester Pierce to describe the insults and slights he had witnessed against Black people. The term has taken on a broader meaning to refer to all the slights, indignities, put-downs, and insults that people of color, women, LGBTQ2+, and other marginalized groups experience in their day-to-day interactions with people. Interactions with people like you and me who don't consider ourselves racists or oppressors, but who still often hold ingrained biases and stereotypes that we may not even be aware of. And that's what makes microaggressions so insidious. As Janae Desmond Harris points out in an article on microaggressions, they happen casually, frequently, and often without any harm intended. But they're painful to the person on the receiving end because we're not seeing or honoring the person for who they are. Instead, we are identifying them with our socially constructed blinders on. So let's think of some examples of what we might see on a Sunday morning. When greeting a person with a disability, you raise your voice, implying the person is slow or can't understand as well because they have a disability. Or you meet two sisters who've come to church a few times together, and you ask them if they're sisters, implying that they couldn't be a couple. Would you ask a man and woman if they were siblings? A woman speaks up at a meeting and gets quickly interrupted by a man. The message? Your voice isn't valued. And then there's the one that many of us are guilty of. A person of color shows up at hospitality hour and you ask them where they're from. And when they reply, Toronto or Montreal, you ask, where are you originally from? The message? You're not from here, and perhaps even you don't belong. Because no harm is intended, it's easy to dismiss the person's reaction, to think they're simply being too sensitive. Hopefully this video will give a different perspective.
For people who still don't think that microaggressions are a problem,
Oh, you're so well spoken.
just imagine, instead of being a stupid comment, a microaggression is a mosquito bite.
Ugh, it's a compliment.
Mosquito bites and their itch are one of nature's most annoying features. But if you're only bitten every once in a while,
No, where are you really from?
Cleveland?
sure, it's annoying, but it's not that big a deal. The problem is that some people get bitten by mosquitoes a lot more than other people. I mean, a lot more. Whether it's on a date,
Oh, your English is so good.
Excuse me?
going grocery shopping,
You know, everything happens for a reason.
I'm just buying apples.
commuting to work,
So when are you gonna have a baby?
watching TV,
We have to keep the Redskins' name. It's part of our culture and history.
or just walking down the street with your partner.
I couldn't even tell you were gay.
Mosquitoes seem to pop up everywhere.
Do you know John? Give me shopping advice. I love Cher too.
And getting bit by mosquitoes every day,
Can I touch your hair?
multiple times a day,
So pretty. Can
Can I touch
your
it,
hair,
please? Can I please?
is annoying. And makes you want to go ballistic on those mosquitoes, which seems like a huge overreaction to people who only get bit every once in a while.
It's just a mosquito bite. Who cares?
Just another angry black woman.
Of course, beyond just being annoying, some mosquitoes carry truly threatening diseases that can mess up your life for years.
Astrophysics? Maybe you should try less challenging, Major.
Ow, my dreams.
And other mosquitoes carry strains that can even kill you.
He looked like he was up to trouble, okay? I felt threatened.
So next time you think someone's overreacting, just remember, some people experience mosquito bites all the time.
You're all so exotic. Wow.
And by mosquito bites, we mean microaggressions.
So what do we do if we want to avoid being a source of microaggressions and inadvertently causing these ouches? Janae Desmond Harris summarizes by saying, make an effort. Think about the biases and stereotypes that you might hold. Pay attention to how your words affect others. Be curious when someone reacts negatively to something you've said. Listen without being defensive or dismissive when people explain why certain remarks offend them. And be open to discussing your attitudes and biases and how they might have hurt others. We will make mistakes. It's how we learn and grow. As long as we remember that microaggressions, like mosquito bites, add up, and what might not seem like a big deal to us may be just that to someone else. So let's turn the ouch of microaggressions into a learning experience. The aha, now I understand, and I'll try and do better in the future.
As you've heard from these presentations, the course gave us the opportunity to explore many manifestations of oppressive behavior. We began to understand how these same base attitudes, rooted in our privilege and socialization, can lead us to behave in inappropriate and hurtful ways. We also learned that working to be aware of and address these behaviors is continuous work that can be made easier when we are part of a supportive community. Our FirstUs can be those communities. For example, let's look at what we are doing at Ottawa FirstU to address these issues. Here are 3 actions. During the course, we had the opportunity to practice responses to some of these situations, but not as much as we would have liked. And so there are plans to offer follow-up sessions this fall for all who are interested that will provide participants the opportunity to practice showing up and responding to situations such as microaggressions that need a response. In another action, our congregation, along with all UU congregations across the country, is engaging in a discussion about adopting a proposed 8th principle, which aims at dismantling racism and other oppressions. The discussions and work we do to address our privileges connects us directly with those discussions. Finally, here at FirstU, watch for announcements about the launch this fall of the Embracing Diversity Welcoming Guide. This will give guidance to many of the points we've discussed today in the Ottawa FirstU context. Addressing racism and other isms is ongoing work. We will never reach a point where this work is finished. We need to learn to recognize when we act harmfully from our position of privilege and socialization. We need to change these behaviors, and we need to learn from these experiences so we can continue to grow. We can create communities here at our FirstUs where we work together on this together and support one another, both by pointing out when we have made mistakes, the ouches and oopses, and by encouraging each other, the ahas and nices, as we seek to change and learn from these experiences. Let's commit to embracing this work together. And now for the hymn, Building Bridges.
Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you, will you reach out to me?
I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions. With all of our voices and all of our visions, with all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you,
I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Hey!
Woo! Air 5.
Lay it out.
This is the time in our service when we usually accept the offering. You may go to our website or contact our finance manager to find out how you might keep up with your pledge or to make a donation during these times. We give these gifts freely. We receive these gifts gratefully. We dedicate these gifts to the work of our congregation, serving human wholeness, caring for the planet, upholding religious freedom, welcoming the stranger, loving one another. Our closing words today come from UU Reverend Alicia Roxanne Ford. It feels like we are eyeing one another across a great divide, a divide I sometimes call class, race, ethnocentricity, theological perspectives, and its implications for how we practice, how we live, how we be. If you be you and I be me, if we speak truth in love, with love, if we act related with integrity, if we unite our spirits, open and aching and whole and wanting and giving, then the work we engage, the communities we create, the power of who we can be holds a great promise, a great hope for us and our wider communities. And this matters. Let us sing Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Coulton vidas mari de justice, ternurimois, cielum portois, source de vie, viens vers moi, viens vers moi.
Light to all, love to all, peace to all, and may all be well. Thank you.
Every day is so wonderful, and suddenly it's hard to breathe. Now and then I get insecure from all the pain. I'm so ashamed. I am beautiful, no matter what they say. Words can't bring me down. I am beautiful in every single way. Yes, words can't bring me down. No, no. So don't you bring me down today. To all your friends, you're delirious, so consumed in all your doom. Trying hard to fill the want to be